En muy poco tiempo, El Salvador pasó de ser la capital mundial de los homicidios, pasó de literalmente ser el país más peligroso del mundo a ser el país más seguro de América Latina. Ya no es una promesa, es una realidad que están viviendo los salvadoreños.
After El Salvador reached its peak of violence in 2022, President Nayib Bukele's government set out to reverse the criminal situation in the country. To do so, it declared a state of emergency and began a war against the most dangerous gangs in the territory. As if by magic, the word security began to become more frequent among the population. This was because around 70,000 criminals belonging to the Mara Salvatrucha and Barrio 18 gangs were imprisoned. This led to the fulfillment of the promise made by the man known as the world's coolest dictator to bring peace of mind to Salvadorans. However, it also implied the disappearance of human rights when it came to incarcerating criminals and suspects. In today's video, we're going to immerse you in this battle against insecurity, so you can feel firsthand what it would be like to live the life of a gang member in Bukele's El Salvador. Inhuman treatment, a mega prison where days pass without seeing sunlight, and the high price one must pay for having ventured into the path of crime. Get ready for real danger, because here we go. March 2022. Multiple days of violence in the streets escalate the war between authorities and gangs to another level. 62 murders occur in just one day, marking a new and terrifying record. This is the final warning before stricter measures are decided upon. The government of Nayib Bukele declares a state of emergency, a regime that grants greater powers to security forces to carry out arrests. Soon, this decision will be the main cause of the downfall of thousands of criminals, but at the expense of a huge array of controversies. As its name suggests, this measure is unique in nature and can only be carried out in an exceptional situation. No one could oppose the idea of combating the overflow of violence, but the methods used quickly caught the attention of human rights organizations. To begin with, under the new legislation, the government suspended the freedom of association, thereby prohibiting gatherings in public places. Additionally, the right to know the reasons for which a person is detained and the right to have the assistance of a lawyer were also nullified. As if that weren't enough, the 72-hour deadline for preventive detention was extended to 15 days, and authorities were allowed to intercept correspondence and cell phones of those considered suspects. Think about it this way. You're a suspected criminal in El Salvador who has just been arrested. You won't be able to have a lawyer to defend you, and you won't even know the reason why you ended up in jail. Furthermore, you'll face a long time behind bars until your final fate is determined. All these extreme measures exist for one reason: to combat the most ruthless criminals in the country. Below, you can see how these mafias infiltrate the population and plunge people into a life where killing is an everyday occurrence.
¿Matarías por la 18?
Maté por la 18 y me muero por la 18. Ahora ya no mato por la 18, pero sí, quiera sea o no, este número me lo puse, no me lo puedo quitar. Entré a la pandilla, no me puedo salir de la pandilla. Prácticamente voy a morir por la 18, en que no ande haciendo cosas ya por la 18.
But these groups didn't always have such power. Let's learn about their histories. The most fearsome criminal organizations in El Salvador are the Mara Salvatrucha and Barrio 18, two rival gangs that originated in the United States. Political instability and internal wars in various countries of Central America caused Salvadoran citizens, as well as those from Honduras, Guatemala, and Nicaragua, to migrate to American soil. They primarily settled in Los Angeles, where in the 1980s the first Maras were formed to protect themselves from criminals of other ethnic backgrounds. Later on, in 1992, violent clashes between these groups led to the toughening of laws. Since then, it became permissible to try minors as adults, and deportation was also facilitated. As a result, many gang members ended up in prisons and were later deported to their countries of origin. Back in their home country, the experience of a violent life within organized crime led criminals to find in their native land the perfect context to continue growing. Both the Mara Salvatrucha, also known as MS-13, and Barrio 18 or M18 were the groups that grew the most in El Salvador and unleashed their own war against each other and against the authorities. Additionally, for years, they have been involved in drug trafficking in the region, often cooperating with Mexican cartels such as Los Zetas or the Sinaloa cartel. Gang members are distinguished by the peculiar tattoos covering their faces, and they are also characterized by the use of secret languages that only they understand. Nonverbal communication predominates, sending messages through the color of clothing or hair, gestures, graffiti, or artifacts left in special places. To be part of these groups, it's necessary to undergo initiation rites that test levels of violence. Those who want to belong to any of these organizations are forced to commit crimes, including murders. Now the question is, how did the lives of these gang members in El Salvador transform under Bukele's regime? Imagine this scenario. You're gathered with some colleagues and suddenly a blow from behind knocks you to the ground. A police officer on your back prevents you from moving and handcuffs you. Absolutely nothing you say will matter. They can do whatever they want with you, and neither you nor anyone else can stop them. Just like the testimony you heard earlier, the tattoos on your body indicate that you were once part of a dangerous gang, and now it's your turn to experience terror. This is how you will be transported to the mega prison built by Nayib Bukele, which was used to incarcerate a large portion of the 70,000 criminals detained by his government. It's called the Counterterrorism Confinement Center, also known as CCOT, located 74 kilometers from the capital city of San Salvador in the Tecoluca Valley next to the Chichantepec volcano. The prison was built in a record time of 7 months, and to carry out this project, the state bought 166 hectares of land. Within this space, 8 pavilions were erected, which are enclosed within a perimeter surrounded by an 11-meter-high concrete wall that is 2.1 kilometers long. Additionally, the place is also protected by electrified fences and guarded both day and night by 600 soldiers and 250 police officers. To give you an idea of its size, the mega prison is the size of 7 soccer fields. Each pavilion has a construction area of 6,000 square meters, and in each of its 32 cells equipped with steel bars, 80 inmates can be accommodated. If you are, were, or are simply presumed to be a criminal, that will be your destination. So let's see what amenities you can expect. When it comes to sleeping, you'll find that the beds are made of iron sheets without mattresses or pillows. A cold and hard surface to start and end the day. Furthermore, don't get excited about the possibility of going beyond the bars. The CCOT doesn't have recreational areas for sports or simply stretching your legs. If you exceed the permitted limits, the pavilions are also equipped with so-called punishment cells, dark and windowless. There, the life of gang members with bad behavior is reduced to 4 walls, and they can't even see sunlight. Additionally, in this case, the bed becomes simply a cement platform, so it's like sleeping on the floor. Upon entering the Counterterrorism Confinement Center, both inmates and security administrative personnel have to pass through registration areas before crossing 3 fortified gates controlled by guards. Likewise, every gang member who arrives must go through a body scanner and wait in an area where they will then be photographed. Images of those transferred to the CCOT also show that all criminals arrive wearing shorts, bare torsos, and no footwear on their feet. This way, when you find yourself inside this place, you'll only be a number, impossible to distinguish from any other prisoner. As mentioned earlier, the prison hasn't been built with courtyards, recreational areas, or conjugal spaces. Criminals only leave their cells when they go to a room for their virtual judicial process. Imagine experiencing it firsthand. Each of your days will be the same as the last, an endless punishment. Beyond this, it doesn't mean that the hundreds of guards aren't prepared to withstand possible riots. Security personnel are armed at all times with pistols and assault rifles, supplemented by electronic equipment that blocks cell phone signals, preventing communication from the prison. If you're the one on the other side of the bars, you'll need to be very careful because the prison staff won't hesitate to use everything at their disposal to punish you. The authorities assure that this prison is where all the criminals who planned the mourning and pain against the Salvadoran people serve their sentences. In addition to admitting that the price will be the harshest regime, they promise that the gang members will no longer walk away and will pay for what they are: cowardly terrorists. This policy aims to ensure that the members of the savage gangs get what they deserve, a sentence that they must pay in a maximum security prison. According to the country's regulations, inmates can serve sentences of up to 30 years in this prison, so if you are one of them, you will have a long time living in inhumane conditions. Nearing the end, we will tell you more about the numerous criticisms of the harsh regime in El Salvador, where complaints of human rights violations are constant. Among a long list, Amnesty International expressed its deep concern about Bukele's strict prison and called on the president to change course in his policy of mass arrests. According to the organization, this activity can only lead to an increase in abuses of power. In addition, they indicated that gang violence in the country must be addressed comprehensively, guaranteeing the rights of the entire population. Another entity that raised its voice was the NGO Human Rights Commission of El Salvador, which criticized the mega prison, pointing out that it is a shame for the country. They stated that the government boasts of having the largest prison in Latin America, which should not be seen as pride, but as a fact that entails risks of overcrowding and violence. Now, after learning about the controversies of this severe regime, it was time to say goodbye. But first, we would like to ask you, do you think you could withstand the punishment that a gang member faces in El Salvador? Thank you very much for staying until the end. We are waiting for you to join us in the next video.